Even the most mundane of hauntings can send a chill down anyone's spine under the right circumstances. Alone in the middle of the night, going to the bathroom only to hear the floorboards creak outside the door. There's nobody there except the ghost that likes to make itself known from time to time. Other hauntings can leave visitors and residents with much more than an uneasy feeling. Number 5. The Limp Mansion in St. Louis, Missouri, has a history filled with tragedy, which allegedly still lingers within its walls today. The Limp family, for which the mansion is today named after, rose swiftly to great heights under control of two creative businessmen, but was rapidly undone by a supposed curse that resulted in 4 members of the family taking their lives within the building. Today, it is a bed and breakfast and restaurant, but many visitors are drawn by the ghosts that one time called the mansion their home. The sad story began with German immigrant John Adam Limp, who came to the area in 1938. He brought with him a family recipe for beer, which soon became popular. He began a modest brewery company, which under the presidency of son William Limp Sr., became a multi-million-dollar business. Things started to go downhill when William's son, Frederick, passed away at the age of 28. Many stories try to claim this was a mysterious passing, but Frederick had been ill in health all of his life and likely passed away due to heart failure. William was devastated. He became less and less involved with running the company, and in 1904, shortly after the passing of his best friend, William took his own life. The business passed to his son, William Limp Jr., but the second William didn't have the same luck building the business as his father. He spent money on lavish parties and renovating the mansion, which he called his home, to include great ballrooms in the underground caves. He had a wife and a son, William Limp III, with her, but was not faithful and allegedly had a second son with a prostitute or a servant. This son was born with Down syndrome and was confined to the attic, where many claim he still resides today. By the time Prohibition came around, the Limp Brewery was already in decline, but this would be the final nail in the coffin. Long after the brewery closed, William's sister, Elsa, became the second member of the family to take her life in the mansion. William slipped into a depression and began complaining of ill health. In 1922, he too took his own life. William III died young, but it was due to natural causes, and the mansion fell into the possession of William Jr.'s brother, Charles. Charles became the last in the family to take his own life in the mansion, having developed a morbid fear of germs. The only remaining Limp brother, named Edwin, lived to be 70, but instructed his butler to burn family documents and artifacts upon his death. So many of the details that might explain the family tragedy have now been lost. After Charles Limp passed away, the mansion was turned into a boarding house and briefly a wing of a hospital for the poor and homeless. Many told stories of ghostly apparitions, including that of a deformed boy who lived in the attic who would be seen peeking through the windows. The boy, who was supposedly calling himself Zeke, is the most famous of the many ghosts that allegedly reside in the mansion. Confined to the attic, some believe this to be William Limp Jr.'s illegitimate son, though his son was believed to be in his 30s when he passed away. Others have suggested he may have been a patient when the building was a hospital, who was locked away and forgotten due to his deformities. Other ghosts supposedly include a man who lurks in the women's restroom of the restaurant, peeking over the stalls. This is allegedly William Jr., who was known as a womanizer. Charles Limp's dog, who Charles also took the life of, is also believed to still wander the corridors. Number 4. Though not nearly as gruesome or terrifying as its Netflix counterpart, there is a real Hill House, and according to many, it really is haunted. Hill House in Helensburgh, Scotland, is more famous for being the work of the famous Scottish architect Charles Rennie Mackintosh than it is for its ghost stories. The brilliant white building was built for Walter Blackie, who ran the publishing company founded by his grandfather. It was built using Portland cement, which absorbs water and has led to water damage. To try to dry out the building in recent years, a chainmail mesh was built around the building. Visitors could climb scaffolding and view the house from above. For an entire regular-sized house to be viewed from above in an enclosed face can be quite eerie, but the real creepy stories came from within the house. By all accounts, Walter had a good life. He and his wife Annie adored the house and lived there together for almost 50 years when Walter passed away from natural causes. Annie moved out, but Walter apparently continued to reside within the building. Many staff members have reported seeing, after the building is closed to the public, a man dressed in a black cape, with his head and face partially covered. The man doesn't seem at all concerned by the staff, acting as if they aren't there, and goes through the room that once was Walter's study before disappearing into thin air. Others have reported the smell of pipe smoke. At first, this would have been somewhat alarming, as there is a real concern the building may be damaged by fire, as has happened to another treasured building designed by Charles Mackintosh. But there's never any source of the pipe smoke, and the fact Walter in life enjoyed smoking a pipe has led many to chalk this up to his ghost continuing his pastime. The ghost has never reacted negatively to any of the visitors, even those who stayed overnight in the apartment at the top of the building. It seems Walter Blackie is happy to let others enjoy the building he loved so much in life. Number 3. Spain's Tenerife is a popular European holiday destination. But most people visiting the Canary Islands aren't coming to learn about the fascinating history of the islands. But if they were, the Museum of History and Anthropology is there to tell tales of European conquest and exploration. What isn't as well advertised is the history of the building itself. For Casa Lercaro, the building where the museum is housed, it has its own dark story to tell. The mansion was built in the 16th century by Antonio Lercaro. He was a lieutenant general and a well-respected member of a wealthy Genoese merchant family. Antonio had high ambitions and, as was not uncommon for the wealthy at the time, sought to marry his daughter to someone who would help him achieve those. The husband-to-be was an elderly man, but much older than young Catalina Lercaro. He had a good position in the community and was very wealthy. Some also described him as being overbearing, and Catalina knew her marriage to him would be an unhappy one. According to legend, on the day of her wedding, she threw herself into the well that still lies in the courtyard of the property. Taking her own life was the only way she could see out of the marriage. Catalina's remains were recovered, but the Catholic Church would not allow anyone who took their life to be buried in their cemeteries. Instead, the Lercaro family supposedly buried her remains within the house itself. They then closed off the well and moved to a different island. According to many who worked at the museum, Catalina's spirit has been unable to leave. They've seen a ghostly woman wandering around and have heard footsteps that don't seem to have a source. The footsteps are mainly in the upper areas of the house, near where a picture of Jesus is kept. It's not clear if workers placed the picture there in reaction to the supposed paranormal activity, or if Catalina is for some reason drawn to it. Catalina's remains have never been found, even when restoration work was done on the building. Number 2. For centuries, 50 Berkeley Square in London has been known as the most haunted house in the city. From the outside, it looks much like any other in the street. A Georgian townhouse attached on either side by houses built in the same style. The house looks the same as countless others in central London. The only thing that stands out is the blue plaque used to denote an important historical figure has some relation to the building. In this case, it's George Canning, a former UK Prime Minister who once lived there. It was a few decades after Canning resided in the building that 50 Berkeley Square acquired its haunted status. Thomas Myers was known as an eccentric man, according to a relative, and bordered on lunacy. His father made his fortune in India, and Thomas was a very wealthy and eligible bachelor. But for some reason, neither he or his sister ever married. According to stories, Thomas was engaged to be married when he moved into Berkeley Square, but his fiancée jilted him and Thomas became a recluse. Whether the story is true is debated, but Thomas definitely became a recluse. He lived in the attic of the house and would only come out at night, only a dim candle lighting the way. For many years, the only person recorded to be living in the house was one of Thomas's servants. He never left the house, and outside of the building fell into a state of disrepair. Thomas stopped paying taxes and was brought to court. Though he never showed up, Thomas was let off because the house was supposedly haunted. It's not clear why people thought the house was haunted at the time. There's been no lack of stories of apparitions before Thomas had moved in. It's likely the abandoned look of the house, combined with the general fascination of ghost stories at the time, perpetuated the rumors. Thomas eventually passed away by natural causes. The house remained empty until the lease ran out, when new tenants moved in. Since then, there have been many stories of people passing away due to fright. In one story, a maid was sent to prepare the attic bedroom for a visiting man who was engaged to the daughter of the family who lived there. After just a few moments, the maid screamed in terror, and when the family came to see what was going on, she told them to not let it touch her. She passed away in a hospital the following day. The man who'd come to stay was unfazed by the hysteria and stayed in the room anyway. He would wake up in the house in the middle of the night, with others hearing loud screaming, and he passed away with a look of terror on his face. Many have claimed to see a brown mist, which is apparently responsible for the terror. It doesn't take on the form of a person, so it's impossible to know if this is the spirit of Thomas Myers, or if there was something else in the house that could have explained why Thomas became such a recluse. Number 1. The Myrtles plantation in Louisiana is known as one of the most haunted buildings in America. The tragic and often gruesome stories behind the hauntings are dubious to say the least, but the result of whatever history did take place has captured the attention of many. With so many witnesses to paranormal activity, it's hard to ignore the possibility the Myrtles is haunted, even if the stories may not be true. The most well-known ghost that supposedly spends its afterlife at the plantation is the woman in green headdress. Popular legend says that the woman's name is Chloe. She was a slave who'd worked at the plantation when it was owned by Clark Woodruff in the early 1800s. Clark had married the daughter of the Myrtles' original owner and had taken over the plantation after his father-in-law passed away. By all accounts, he was an upstanding man known for his integrity with men and the law, but the legends claim he was a womanizer. He turned his attention to slaves who he owned, including Chloe. Chloe would eavesdrop in on Woodruff's private conversations to try to stay a step ahead of any plans to send her to work in the fields. But one day, she was caught and punished. The punishment left her missing an ear, and she was forced to wear a green turban to cover her scar. Chloe decided to take revenge and poisoned the Clark family, and she herself had her life taken by other slaves fearful of what Woodruff may do to them. The story is completely false. Though the Woodruffs did own slaves, none went by the name of Chloe or anything even similar. Clark did lose his wife and other family members around the time that the story was set, but this was to yellow fever, an illness that claimed the lives of many in the area at the time. The legend of a woman in a green turban seems to have evolved from a tale told by later owners of the plantation, who reported seeing an elderly woman wearing a green bonnet. The other famous ghost that visits the area is that of William Winters. William and his wife Sarah, the daughter of the previous owner, lived at the plantation in the 1860s. In 1871, William was teaching Sunday school in one of the parlors when someone on horseback arrived and demanded William come outside to speak with him. William did so, and while he stood on the porch outside, the stranger took his life. The story says William staggered back into the house, climbed the stairs to the 17th step, where he passed away in his wife's arms. According to legend, the sound of his heavy footsteps making the journey can still sometimes be heard. In reality though, William passed away on the porch, so the sounds of footsteps remained unexplained. Other ghosts include those of two children who appear in the mirrors and leave fingerprints on the glass, and peer into windows with hands cupped around their faces as if they're trying to see inside. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knots, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.